The halls of Casterly Rock echoed not with the cries of a malformed babe, but with the healthy wail of a son, strong of limb and fair of face. Lady Joanna, though weakened, lived through the birthing, a blessing that Tywin Lannister acknowledged, with a rare, almost imperceptible softening of his gaze. This Tyrion was no monster, no cruel jest of the gods. He was whole, complete, a golden lion cub to take his rightful place in the pride. Growing up in the shadow of his elder siblings, Jaime and Cersei, young Tyrion lacked for nothing in the way of material comfort. He had the finest tutors, the most skilled swordsmasters, the richest garments. Yet, the warmth of a father's love, the unguarded praise that flowed so freely towards Jaime's martial prowess and Cersei's striking beauty remained a distant shore, forever out of reach. Tywin, while not overtly cruel, remained distant, his approval conditional, his expectations impossibly high. Tyrion, unlike his twin siblings, seemed driven to earn that elusive paternal nod. Jaime excelled at arms, a natural warrior. Cersei, charmed and manipulated, a born queen. Tyrion, lacking their innate gifts, sought his own path to prominence. He found it in books. While Jaime trained with sword and lance, Tyrion devoured histories, philosophies, and ledgers. He possessed a sharp intellect, a keen understanding of strategy, and a remarkable talent for administration. He could decipher complex trade agreements, predict the ebb and flow of markets, and untangle the most intricate of legal disputes. Tywin, ever pragmatic, recognized the value of Tyrion's intellect. He tasked his youngest son with managing the day-to-day affairs of Casterly Rock, overseeing the mines, dispensing justice to the small folk, and handling the endless stream of petitions that poured in from across the Westerlands. Tyrion, to his credit, excelled. He was fair, efficient, and remarkably popular amongst the common people. He listened to their concerns, addressed their grievances, and dispensed justice with a wisdom beyond his years. However, this competence did little to thaw the ice in Tywin's heart. He saw Tyrion's administrative skills as a useful tool, a means to an end, but not as a reflection of true worth. Jaime, the warrior, remained the heir apparent in Tywin's eyes, despite his position in the Kingsguard. Tyrion was merely a capable steward, a cog in the machine of House Lannister, never the master of it. This reality stung, but Tyrion persevered, clinging to the hope that one day he would finally earn his father's respect. This hope was fueled in part by a secret. During one of his many administrative journeys, he met a young woman named Tasha, a commoner of surpassing beauty and gentle spirit. She saw past the golden hair and green eyes, past the weight of House Lannister, to the man beneath. They fell, deeply in love, and in a moment of youthful impulsiveness, they married in secret, exchanging vows beneath the ancient weirwood tree in a secluded grove. For a brief, shining moment, Tyrion knew happiness, a joy untainted by ambition or expectation. He envisioned a life with Tasha, a life beyond the reach of Casterly Rock, a life of simple contentment. But secrets, as they often do, have a way of unraveling. Word of the marriage reached Tywin's ears, and his reaction was swift and merciless. He summoned Tyrion and Tasha to the Great Hall, his face a mask of cold fury. He accused Tasha of being a scheming whore, a common harlot who had bewitched his son for her own gain. He declared the marriage invalid, a foolish infatuation unworthy of a Lannister. Then he delivered the cruelest blow of all. He ordered the guards to seize Tasha, and before Tyrion's horrified eyes, they subjected her to unspeakable acts designed to humiliate Tyrion and break his spirit. Tywin watched with chilling detachment, his gaze never wavering from his son's face. Afterward, Tasha was banished from Casterly Rock, cast out into the world with nothing but the clothes on her back. Tyrion was left shattered, his heart broken, his soul scarred. The hope that had sustained him for so long, the hope of earning his father's love, died that day. In its place grew a bitter resentment, a burning hatred that would simmer beneath the surface for years to come. The incident with Tasha irrevocably changed Tyrion. The idealistic young man, eager to please his father and serve his house, was replaced by a cynical, disillusioned figure, consumed by a thirst for revenge. He continued to perform his administrative duties, but his heart was no longer in it. He went through the motions, fulfilling his obligations, but his mind was elsewhere, plotting, scheming, waiting for the opportunity to strike back at the man who had destroyed his happiness. Tywin, oblivious to the depth of Tyrion's resentment, continued to use his son as a tool, a means to an end. He granted him more responsibilities, but always with a subtle air of condescension, a constant reminder of Tyrion's perceived inferiority. He sent him to Lannisport to oversee trade, to the mines to settle disputes, to the villages to collect taxes. It was in Lannisport that Tyrion found a temporary solace in the company of other young nobles, men who, like him, felt stifled by the rigid expectations of Westerosi society. They gathered in the taverns and brothels, drinking and whoring, reveling in the fleeting pleasures of the flesh. Tyrion, driven by a desperate need to forget his pain, immersed himself in this world of vice, seeking oblivion in the arms of prostitutes and the bottom of a wine-glass. Among these companions was Rodrik Spicer, a young knight of humble origins, but with a keen mind and a thirst for adventure. Rodrik admired Tyrion's intelligence and wit, and the two formed a close bond. He became Tyrion's squire, his confidant, his closest friend. One drunken night, as they sat in a Lannisport tavern, Rodrik voiced what Tyrion had been secretly contemplating for years. He suggested that they leave Westeros, seek their fortunes in Essos, the land of sellswords and free cities. "What is there for us here, Tyrion?" Rodrik asked, his voice slurred with wine. "You're a Lannister, yes, but you'll never be the Lord of Casterly Rock. Your father will see to that. And I'm just a landed knight, destined to spend my days chasing after stray sheep and settling petty squabbles." Tyrion stared into his wine, glass, swirling the liquid around and around. "And what would we do in Essos?" he asked, his voice heavy with cynicism. "Become sellswords? Fight for petty tyrants and greedy merchants?" "Why not?" Rodrik replied, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "We're both skilled warriors. You're a brilliant strategist. We could form our own company, make our own rules, carve out our own destiny." Tyrion hesitated. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. It meant abandoning his family, his home, everything he had ever known. But it also offered a chance for freedom, for independence, for revenge. He thought of Tasha, of the life that had been stolen from them. He thought of Tywin, of the cold, calculating man who had orchestrated his misery. He thought of the future that awaited him in Westeros, a future of subservience and resentment. "All right," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Let's do it." Rodrik grinned, clapping Tyrion on the back. "That's the spirit. We'll gather a band of adventurers, brave and loyal men, and sail across the narrow sea. We'll make a name for ourselves, Tyrion. We'll show the world what we're truly capable of." And so, the seeds of rebellion were sown. Tyrion Lannister, the golden son of Casterly Rock, the brilliant administrator, the scorned lover, the resentful son, was about to embark on a journey that would take him far from his home, far from his family, and far from the shadow of his father. He was about to forge his own destiny, a destiny that would be written in blood, gold, and fire. Tyrion, standing amidst the grandeur of Casterly Rock, felt a hollowness that no amount of privilege could fill. The whispers, though unspoken, were ever present. Second son, not Jaime, a disappointment. His father, ever the pragmatist, saw him as a tool, not a son. The tragedy with Tasha had shattered something within him, leaving behind a bitter residue of resentment and a desperate need for purpose. The Westerlands, with its rigid hierarchy and Tywin's suffocating control, offered him neither. He needed to escape, to forge his own path, to prove himself on his own terms. He needed adventure. The idea, once a whisper, grew into a roar. Essos, the free cities, sellswords, gold, glory, a chance to be Tyrion, not Tywin's son. The planning began in secret. He couldn't simply announce his departure. Tywin would stop him, not out of concern, but out of a desire to maintain control. He needed a discreet exit, a company of loyal men, and a ship. His existing connections proved invaluable. The knights and minor lords he'd befriended during his years handling the small folk remembered his fairness, his sharp wit, his willingness to listen. They were restless, ambitious, or simply down on their luck, and Tyrion's proposition offered them a chance at something more. The first recruit was, of course, Rodrik Spicer. Young, eager, and fiercely loyal, Rodrik had been his constant companion since his squire days. He possessed a thirst for adventure and a knowledge of Essosi customs that would prove invaluable. Rodrik, Tyrion began, summoning him to his private chambers one evening. "I have a proposition for you." Rodrik grinned. "Anything for my lord. I'm leaving Westeros." Rodrik's eyebrows shot up. "Leaving? For where?" "Essos, the free cities. I intend to make a name for myself." "As what? A merchant? A scholar?" Tyrion smirked. "A sellsword captain." Rodrik's grin widened. "Now, that I'd like to see. Count me in." Recruiting others proved surprisingly easy. He sought out second sons, younger sons with no inheritance, knights whose families had fallen on hard times, and ambitious young lords eager to prove themselves. He promised them gold, glory, and a chance to escape the stifling confines of Westerosi society. Sir Harys Swift, a knight of modest means, saw it as a chance to restore his family's fortunes. Sir Duncan Sand, a bastard of Dorne, sought to escape the stigma of his birth. Lord Adam Marbrand's younger brother, Sir Lorien Marbrand, craved adventure beyond the Westerlands. Slowly, meticulously, Tyrion assembled his company. 300 strong, a mix of Westerosi ambition and desperation, united by a shared desire for something more. The ship, a sturdy carrack purchased with a combination of his own savings and discreet loans, was christened the Lion's Venture. The name was both a nod to his heritage and a declaration of his independence. The departure was shrouded in secrecy. Under the cover of darkness, they slipped away from Lannisport, the lights of the city fading behind them as they sailed west toward a new dawn, a new life, and a new identity. The journey across the narrow sea was uneventful, save for the usual storms and seasickness. Tyrion, however, found himself strangely invigorated. The fresh sea air, the camaraderie of his men, and the anticipation of the unknown filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Upon reaching Tyrosh, Tyrion knew they needed to establish themselves. He couldn't simply be Tyrion Lannister, son of Tywin. He needed a new name, a new persona, one that commanded respect and inspired confidence. After much deliberation, he settled on Tyrion the Lion, a name that acknowledged his heritage while subtly altering it. It was bold, confident, and easy to remember. He had new armor crafted, emblazoned with a roaring lion, not rampant as on the Lannister sigil, but striding forward, a symbol of his own journey. Their first contract came quickly. A small village outside Tyrosh, plagued by bandits, offered a modest sum to protect them. It was a simple task, but it was a start. Tyrion, axe in hand, led his men into the field. He wasn't a Jaime, a natural warrior, but he was intelligent, resourceful, and determined. He studied the terrain, anticipated the bandits' tactics, and positioned his men accordingly. The battle was short and decisive. The bandits, a ragtag group of outlaws, were quickly routed. Tyrion himself acquitted himself well, fighting with a ferocity born of years of repressed anger and a burning desire to prove himself. The villagers were ecstatic, showering them with praise and gratitude. The gold was welcome, but the respect was even more so. Word of Tyrion the Lion and his lion's venture began to spread. They were seen as disciplined, reliable, and effective. More contracts followed, each more lucrative than the last. They fought for Tyroshi merchants, protecting their caravans from Dothraki raids. They defended villages from rival city-states. They even participated in small-scale skirmishes between the free cities, always fighting with skill and determination. Rodrik proved to be an invaluable asset. His knowledge of Essozi languages, customs, and politics allowed them to navigate the treacherous world of mercenary life with relative ease. He was a natural leader, inspiring loyalty and respect among the men. The Lion's venture grew in size and reputation. More Westerosi flocked to their banner, drawn by the promise of gold and adventure. Soon they numbered over 1,000 strong, a formidable force in the free cities. Tyrion, the bookish, overlooked son of Tywin Lannister, had become Tyrion the Lion, a respected sellsword captain, a leader of men, a force to be reckoned with. He was building something of his own, something that would leave a mark on the world. He was finally finding his purpose. Their success was not without its challenges. The free cities were rife with intrigue and treachery. They faced betrayal, double-crossing, and attempts on their lives. Tyrion, however, proved adept at navigating the political landscape, using his wit, intelligence, and cunning to outmaneuver his enemies. He also grappled with the moral complexities of mercenary life. He witnessed firsthand the brutality of war, the suffering of innocent people, and the ruthlessness of those who sought power. He wrestled with his conscience, struggling to reconcile his desire for glory with his sense of right and wrong. One evening, after a particularly brutal battle, Tyrion found himself alone, staring out at the starlit sky. Rodrik approached him, a concerned look on his face. "You seem troubled, my lord," Rodrik said. "It's the killing, Rodrik, the senseless violence. I never imagined it would be like this." Rodrik sighed. "This is the life we've chosen, Tyrion. We're sellswords. We fight for those who pay us. But is it right to sell our swords to the highest bidder, regardless of the consequences?" Rodrik paused, considering his words carefully. "I don't know, Tyrion. But I do know that we're making a difference. We're protecting the innocent, defending the weak. We're bringing order to chaos." Tyrion remained silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps you're right, Rodrik. Perhaps we are making a difference." Despite the moral complexities, Tyrion found a strange sense of satisfaction in his new life. He was no longer living in his father's shadow. He was his own man, forging his own destiny. And then, one day, a rumor reached his ears, a whisper from a sailor who had recently arrived from Braavos. A rumor about a woman, a sailor's wife with dark hair and blue eyes, who bore a striking resemblance to someone he had once known. Tasha. The name echoed in his mind, a ghost from his past, a reminder of his greatest loss. He dismissed it at first, telling himself it was just a coincidence. But the rumor persisted, growing louder, more insistent. He couldn't ignore it any longer. He had to know. He chartered a ship and sailed to Braavos, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. He searched the city for days, asking questions, following leads, until finally, he found her. She was working in a small tavern, pouring drinks and singing songs for the sailors. Her face was etched with lines of hardship, but her eyes still held the same spark of warmth and intelligence that he remembered. He approached her cautiously, his voice barely a whisper. "Tasha?" She looked up, her eyes widening in recognition. Tyrion. The years melted away. They embraced, tears streaming down their faces. They talked for hours, catching up on lost time. Tasha told him of her escape from Casterly Rock, her struggles to survive, and her eventual arrival in Braavos. She also told him something else, something that shattered his world. She had a daughter. Her name was Lana, and she was 13 years old. Tyrion was stunned. He had a daughter, a child he had never known, a child who had been denied a father because of Tywin's cruelty. He had to meet her. Tasha hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. She led him to a small, cramped apartment where Lana was waiting. Lana was the spitting image of her mother, with the same dark hair, blue eyes, and gentle smile. Tyrion's heart ached with a mixture of love and regret. He knelt down before her, taking her hand in his. "Lana," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I am your father." Lana's eyes widened in surprise. She had always wondered about her father, the knight who had supposedly died in battle. Now, here he was, a sellsword captain, a lion in a foreign land. She embraced him, tears streaming down her face. "Father," she whispered. Tyrion had found his family, a family he thought he had lost forever. He vowed to protect them, to provide for them, to give them the life they deserved. His journey was far from over, but now he had a new purpose, a new reason to fight. He was no longer just Tyrion the Lion, sellsword captain. He was Tyrion Lannister, father, husband, and protector of his family. The Lion's venture had a new direction, a new motivation, and a renewed determination to carve its own path in the world. The world of Essos, with all its entanglements, political intrigue, and endless possibilities, awaited. Success breeds success, and it isn't long before more contracts come their way. Just as Roderick predicted, everyone in Essos is always in need of a sellsword. Soon enough, the Lion's Venture Company begins winning some genuinely notable victories. These are small at first, sure. Things like fighting off bandits, protecting caravans from raiders, and intimidating villages into paying their tribute. But it isn't long before they're tasked with fighting rival mercenary companies and even participating in larger-scale Essosi wars. At first, Tyrion still fights in all these battles, axe in hand. He stands in the thick of the fighting, shoulder to shoulder with his men. But as the company gains more recruits, they amass enough experienced fighters to handle that aspect, allowing Tyrion to focus on another important area: managing the company's funds and logistics. With their rising success, someone has to manage their ever-growing coffers and handle the delicate meetings with the archons and merchant princes who might hire them. That task naturally falls to Tyrion, whose high birth and natural charisma allows him to wine and dine, laugh, and negotiate with the best of them. He might smile charmingly across the table for a moment, but then he'll go on to demand fair terms and generous compensation for his forces. The actual military commands, meanwhile, fall almost entirely to Sir Roderick, who quickly proves to be an extremely adept military commander. He manages to lead the Lion's Venture to several genuinely impressive victories, ones that continue to burnish their name across Essos. However, there's still some crossover in their duties. While Tyrion doesn't hunger for combat the same way his brother Jaime or other professional warriors do, he's still more than capable of handling himself in a fight. More importantly, he knows how to plan battles and devise cunning strategies, something he has Sir Roderick help him with at every turn. Meanwhile, the young Spicer proves to be a great help in the halls of their employers, too. He has a far better and more intuitive understanding of the nuances of Essosi culture and politics, something Tyrion comes to rely on more and more over time. Over the course of several years, the Lion's Venture grows from a relatively small band of Westerosi adventurers into a small but respected mercenary company of over 1,000 men. Tyrion and Roderick run a tight ship with the company following a strict set of rules, similar to the Golden Company. One of the most important rules is that they will never abandon a contract, even when the odds are stacked heavily against them. They might surrender if utterly defeated in battle, but they will never break their word or cross their banners if someone offers them more gold. That being said, they're also known to demand extremely high prices for their services. Tyrion's political skills and his unflinching negotiating tactics mean they regularly extract the maximum amount of gold possible from their increasingly desperate employers. But as the years march on, Tyrion still finds himself thinking about his homeland, Westeros. He keeps a close ear to the ground, listening for news of the goings-on back west, but never once feels particularly compelled to return. Even when King Robert dies and the realm descends into a brutal succession crisis that tears the country apart, he does not return. When the king supposedly died of a burst vein after a hunting accident, Joffrey's coronation is immediately challenged by Stannis Baratheon, who claims to have irrefutable evidence that Joffrey is a bastard, born of incest between Cersei and Jaime. This throws the entire realm into open warfare, a brutal and bloody succession war that threatens to consume the entire continent. And yet, Tyrion simply shrugs and continues his life in Essos. His mercenary group continues to gain renown throughout the free cities and beyond. The endless series of potential jobs in Essos keeps him busy and helps keep his mind off the increasingly grim news coming from the West. In fact, with all the widespread trouble going on in the War of the Five Kings, many of the free cities desperately need protection of their vital shipping lanes from increasingly brazen pirates and corsairs. To that end, the Lion's Venture is tasked with guarding a flotilla of merchant ships as they make the long and dangerous journey around the Arm of Dorne and up into the Sunset Sea. With the royal fleet largely absent, busy fighting the war, they have several close-run encounters with pirates and corsairs, and these close calls require every ounce of skill and experience they possess. On several occasions, Tyrion himself is even forced to take up his axe once more, personally leading the defense of the cargo. However, it's worth it in the end. All the ships manage to successfully round the Arm of Dorne and reach their ports, in the Reach, before making their way up towards King's Landing. Throughout that journey, Tyrion steadfastly refuses to set foot on Westerosi soil, preferring to remain aboard the ships. Not even Roderick's increasingly insistent promises of the delights of the finest brothels in the Reach is enough to entice him ashore. But as they return to Braavos, Roderick is absolutely insistent that they visit one particular establishment he's heard about. "Come now, Lord Tyrion," he says, clapping him on the back. "A man ignoring his needs like that cannot be good for his health." Tyrion sighs dramatically. All right. I suppose we did enjoy another successful contract. No harm in celebrating, eh?" And so, he allows his former squire to lead him through the cobbled streets of Braavos, towards a particular inn he's heard particularly good things about. The place is well reputed amongst sailors and sellswords, with excellent dancers, potent drinks, and beautiful prostitutes. This place, called Happy Port, is also incredibly expensive, but both men are feeling particularly flush after their recent victory and are happy to share drinks and dance with several of the women. After a few hours, the two of them are thoroughly and utterly drunk. But that's when Roderick grabs Tyrion by the shoulders and turns him towards one particular prostitute at the far end of the establishment. Now, there is only one way to properly end a celebration like this," Roderick says with a leer. "You must get married." Tyrion stares at him blankly. "What? No. I'm much too young for that sort of nonsense." Roderick laughs. "Oh, I think you'll change your tune when you hear what happens at the end. There is this woman here. They call her the sailor's wife. She only sleeps with men who marry her first. Surely you can handle that, right, my lord?" Tyrion shrugs. "All right. Okay. We'll see how pretty this girl is at the end. Not every woman can tie me down." He relaxes and allows his former squire to lead him towards the back of the establishment, where the sailor's wife turns to face them. But as their eyes meet, Tyrion drops his mug and stares at her in absolute disbelief. He digs his heel into the ground, stopping abruptly until Roderick stares at him, concerned. What's the matter, my lord?" But Tyrion doesn't answer. He simply walks past Roderick, brusquely brushing aside anyone who gets in his way, as he stares intently at the woman. The sailor's wife is equally enthralled by this sudden meeting. The two of them continue to slowly make their way towards each other through the crowded room. As they draw closer, the rest of the tavern seems to fall away. All the sounds and boisterous laughter, all the drunken sailors and dancing women, all the knights and peasants in the room. None of it matters. All that matters is the two of them, facing each other across the room. Tyrion looks at her, memorizing every detail. The same dark hair that flowed down her shoulders, the same piercing blue eyes, and those same timeless, elegant features. But now there's a faint shadow of sadness in them, a world weariness that simply wasn't there before. Roderick, looking confused, stammers, Are you still interested in marrying her, my lord?" Tyrion barely hears him. "I was married to her," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "This is my wife, Tasha." Tasha gives a sad smile. "I still am, my lord." By now, the whole tavern is staring at them. But Roderick, sensing the gravity of the situation, looks around and clears his throat meaningfully. He then shakes his head and hands the owner of the brothel a hefty bag of silver to ensure that they will not be disturbed. The chamber is quiet now. Gone are the music and laughter of the tavern outside. Outside the door, the city still breathes and staggers on in a drunken haze. But here in the small back room of the brothel, the air is still and heavy with unsaid things. Tyrion sits on a worn couch, hands trembling. Tasha sits across from him, watching him closely. A single oil lamp flickers between them, casting long shadows over her face. "You haven't changed," Tyrion says, his voice cracking. Tasha shakes her head sadly. "Oh, I've changed. More than I ever wanted. Just not in the ways I'd hoped." Tyrion nods slowly. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. I thought you hated me." Tasha gives a bitter little laugh. "I never did. I thought you were paid, that you were a trollop. I was told you were bought and paid for by my father, that you were never mine to love." Tasha closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. "He lied. He was there to punish me. And you. I didn't even understand why, not until he told me the story he'd made up, that I was part of some elaborate game, a lesson for his son. And you believed him?" Tyrion hangs his head in shame. "I was 13. I thought he would never lie. Not about that." He pauses, his voice filled with regret. "I let him take everything from us, from you. She shakes her head. "Not everything." Tyrion looks up, confused. Tasha's eyes glisten with unshed tears. "I had a daughter," she says softly. "After I fled. She's 13 now." The words hit Tyrion like a crossbow bolt to the chest. He doesn't speak for a long moment. He can't. He simply stares at her, utterly stunned. "I named her Lana," Tasha continues, "so I'd never forget what we had." Tyrion breathes out sharply like he's been punched. She doesn't know who her father is?" Tasha shakes her head. "No. I told her he was a knight from Westeros, long gone to war." She reaches across the gap between them and takes his hand. I want you to meet her." Tyrion's head snaps up. "Come with us," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "Leave. Bravos. You. Her. Come with me. I can protect you both. And if your father ever finds out, he'll never touch either of you again." If he does, his voice drops to a dangerous whisper. I will burn his life to the ground. He's surprised by how much venom is in his voice, but as he says it, he is certain of every single word. His father had taken everything from him, had treated this girl like dirt for the supposed crime of being a low-born commoner. He will never forget that. Never forgive it. Tasha says nothing for a long while. She simply looks at him, her expression unreadable. Then at last, she nods slowly. I'll get her tomorrow. Tyrion closes his eyes. For the first time in years, he feels the stirrings of something he thought long dead. Hope. For the next few weeks, things are utter bliss for Tyrion. Sure, he has to pay a king's ransom to get Tasha and Lana out of Braavos, almost a year's worth of his hard-earned wages. But it's worth every single copper when they ride out of the city beside him, safe and sound. Roderick and the others are quick to accept the new additions to their party, especially his former squire, who constantly refers to them as the Ladies Lannister. For the first few weeks, they tour the free cities searching for their next contract. They hear that Tyrosh desperately needs sellswords and that they may be able to secure a lucrative new contract there. By the time they arrive, they find the city buzzing with activity, as if it were actively preparing for war. Merchants are hard at work converting their trade ships into warships, while the city government fervently debates what they shall do about the ongoing war in Westeros. They soon learn that Robb Stark, the so-called Young Wolf, has proven to be a far more effective commander than anyone in Essos realized, and is now pressing the Lannisters hard, threatening their grip on the Riverlands. Tyrion nearly laughs when he hears this. The great Tywin Lannister, humbled by a mere child, younger than he was when he left. But what Robb Stark doesn't have is the vast, seemingly limitless wealth of House Lannister. They have vast reserves of gold to use in their war chest, and now the Lannisters are actively recruiting sellsword companies from across the narrow sea, promising them riches beyond their wildest dreams in exchange for their service. With Robb's recent victories in the Riverlands, this requires Tywin to urgently reinforce his forces there. And so, one of the Archons is offering an extremely generous contract to several sellsword companies to escort a flotilla of supply ships across the narrow sea and reinforce the desperately embattled Westermen. They would be helping to defend against a future Stark attack. And yet, Tyrion accepts this offer. He sees all the weapons they are being sent, hundreds of seasoned sellswords, enough fodder and grain to last them a year, and ships to ferry even more weapons and even more soldiers over to Westeros. But as he looks at all of this, Tyrion clenches his fists, his face hardens, and he considers what he shall do next. There is only one possible course of action now, and he knows what it might mean, but he no longer cares. Night falls over Tyrosh, but the city does not sleep. The shipyards blaze with torchlight, as crates of Westerosi arms, food, and silver are loaded onto the Tyroshi merchant vessels, now flying the banner of House Lannister. The air smells of pitch and salt and smoke, and the war hasn't even truly come yet. Tyrion watches from a rooftop balcony with Roderick, his helmet tucked under his arm. His eyes are glassy with drink, or memory, or both. You signed the charter, Roderick says, his voice tight. The Archon's seal is on it. You sure about this? Tyrion nods grimly. Do you see that? That's my father. Every crate, every coin, every banner, they bear his mark. That may be, Roderick says, but we gave our word. The Lion's venture has never broken a contract. Tyrion turns to him, his expression dark. Then tonight, we start a new tradition. He pauses, then gives a small nod. Give the signal. Screams suddenly pierce the night as a trail of oil catches fire across the docks. Sailcloth erupts, in flame. One ship, half loaded with siege engines, explodes in a shower of shrapnel and smoke. Chaos erupts across the docks. Tyrion leads from the front, his sword slick and red with blood. His eyes are wild with a barely contained rage. Rodrik, Tasha, and a handful of the others follow, unsure of what's happening, but still loyal to Tyrion, at least until it's too late. Archers fire down from the warehouse roofs, picking off fleeing sailors. A Tyroshi overseer tries to flee with a ledger in hand, but Tyrion cuts him down mid-sentence. "Send my regards to Lord Tywin," he says with a cold smile. The attack is swift and total. Every ship flying a Lannister lion burns before dawn. The lion's venture gathers in the hills beyond the city walls. The men are strangely quiet. No celebration, no boasting. It was a great victory, to be sure, but none of the men take any particular pride in it. Rodrik rides up to Tyrion, his face pale and drawn. "They've put a bounty on our heads. Every port in Tyrosh is closed to us. They say you spat on the Archon's seal. They will now send every free company in the city after us." Tyrion nods grimly. "I did worse than that. I burned his ships." Rodrik explodes, his voice rising in anger. "We were under his contract. You lied to your men and betrayed the mercenaries who fought alongside you. What's happening to you? Tyrion, is vengeance all that's important to you?" Tyrion's face is like stone. "I risked everything today," he says softly. "I risked everything the day I was born under that cursed name. The only difference is now I've actually done something with it." Rodrik glares at him. "And what about the rest of the Lion's venture? Are we just supposed to go along with you on your personal path of vengeance? Are we simply to accept that we may die, that some of us will die? Is that a sacrifice you're willing to make?" Tyrion nods slowly. "They agreed to that when they signed up for this company," he says, his voice flat. "If any man here wants to leave, I won't stop him. You'll be paid what's owed. But I will not march beneath my father's gold. Not ever." Rodrik stares at him for a long moment, his expression a mixture of anger, disbelief, and profound sadness. Then you should never have taken that contract in the first place." Soon enough, 300 men leave, taking their belongings, their families, and their gold with them. This leaves close to 700 men, and yet not all these men stay out of loyalty. Many are simply fearful of leaving, knowing that they may become targets of Tyroshi assassins. They remain for now, but these men watch Tyrion wearily, their trust in him eroded. But the Lord is already turning away, watching the distant city glow with angry red fire. Meanwhile, back in Westeros, Tywin sits at his desk, a raven's message open before him. The wax seal is cracked, and his fingers press it flat with cold precision. "From Tyrosh," he says, his voice devoid of emotion. "Yes, my son has declared war on me." He pauses, and a flicker of something that might be pride crosses his face. "Let them hunt him." He pauses again and reads further down. "He attacked a Tyroshi port, filled with supplies for our war effort in the west. Sir Stafford's army will now be deprived of its troops and supplies," he continues, his voice hardening once more. "But the Tyroshi request permission to hunt him down." He looks up from the message. "You would permit them to kill a Lannister?" A dry laugh escapes his lips. "Let them try." He folds the parchment in half neatly, as though it were just a bill of grain. Despite what he might claim, Tyrion's actions have clearly caused him genuine regret. When they flee from Tyrosh, they are immediately set upon by the rest of the free companies, all eager to collect the hefty bounty placed upon their heads. Tyrosh is more than happy to pay for their heads, as they had not just attacked the other free companies, they had attacked Tyrosh itself, an act of near unprecedented defiance. Throughout their long march east, they faced near constant skirmishes and battles against rival free companies, some of them larger than the Lion's venture, and many more experienced. Tyrion and Rodrik try to lead them as best they can, but it's as if two heads are pulling the army in opposite directions. Once, they could have worked in perfect unison, but now the tensions between them remain high. Rodrik fights only for the sake of the company, while Tyrion is still burning for revenge. Their strategic planning suffers as a result. So instead, their plans seem to flip-flop constantly between a cautious defense and a reckless attack, and their company suffers. As a result, they suffer from forced marches, food shortages, and almost daily battles. Many of their number fall from exhaustion, death, or simple desertion. Every night, their quartermaster reports the steadily rising number of dead and lost, and the numbers grow by the day, hundreds of them. So many that by the time they reach Volantis, the company is down to a third of its original strength. Only 500 men left. And yet, Tyrion cannot deny these losses. Even he cannot help but feel guilty for everything they've lost. Unlike Tyrosh, Volantis has no concern about the ongoing war in the West or the Lion's Venture's recent actions. They are happy to let them remain there and resupply, but steadfastly refrain from hiring them. Despite Tyrion's best efforts to secure a new contract, they have as much trust in the increasingly infamous Free Company as Tyrosh did. But there is someone else who considers hiring them. A representative from Yunkai, the last great slaving city of Slavers Bay, approaches them, offering them a seemingly impossible job. Daenerys Stormborn has conquered the rest of Slavers Bay, freeing the slaves in Astapor and Meereen, and now they request their aid to liberate their homeland from the foreign queen's army. Tyrion stands before a younkish envoy, tall, bald, and draped in silk, dyed a nauseating shade of yellow. He speaks through an interpreter, though his smug, condescending tone carries well enough on its own. The wise masters of Yunkai offer gold, grain, and safe lodging for your company, the interpreter drones. They ask only that you aid in liberating their city from the usurper. Rodrik leans against a tent pole, arms folded, his jaw clenched tightly. Tyrion gives no sign of his thoughts, as he steeples his fingers thoughtfully. "We'll consider it," he says. "But we sign nothing. Not until we see Yunkai for ourselves." The envoy's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "The masters await your blades," he says smoothly. "Do not delay. Their chains grow tighter with each passing day." When the envoy leaves, a heavy silence descends upon the tent. Rodrik breaks it with a snort of disgust. "That's it? You're actually considering this?" Tyrion sighs. "We need coin, Rodrik. Coin and allies. The men are starving. You've seen the rolls. This will allow us to rebuild, restore our reputation, and recruit new members. Taking a city like Meereen would be an amazing victory for us." Rodrik scoffs. "Them? They're slavers. Tyrion, their clients, buy people like cattle. You would drag our reputation further through the mud in the eyes of the Seven Kingdoms? In the eyes of our own members?" Tyrion's jaw tightens. "I won't sign anything yet," he says, "but we've lost 2/3 of our strength, and no free city will touch us. You think I enjoy this? We're mercenaries, Rodrik. We don't get to choose ideal contracts anymore. We take the ones that allow us to survive." Rodrik shakes his head sadly. "Survival isn't worth our honor," he says quietly. "Don't talk to me about honor," Tyrion snaps. "I was born in a house that wore honor like a mask, while it bled people dry. I've watched honorable men rot in dungeons and be beheaded on lies. This is the world we live in. I watched Tywin Lannister treat a good woman with nothing but disdain, because she committed the crime of being lowborn. Honor means nothing to me." Rodrik sighs. "The men, they don't understand you anymore," he says softly. "They're whispering that you've gone too far, that you've lost your way." He pauses, his eyes searching Tyrion's face. "And you? What about you?" Tyrion stares back at him, his expression unreadable. I'm still here now, aren't I? They share a long, silent glance. Something breaks in that moment. A crack forms in the already strained and fragile foundation of their trust. The sun sets in red streaks across the sky as the Lion's Venture approaches Yunkai. But before they can reach its gates, they crest a high ridge and see it. The immense and terrifying scale of the forces arrayed against Daenerys Targaryen. They see the seemingly endless hordes of soldiers the Yunkish have gathered from across Essos. Thousands of heavily armed infantry from the famed lockstep legions, the slaver armies of the Second Sons, the camels and war elephants from Qarth, and far, far more. It was an army that even Tywin Lannister would have taken pride in. Then he turns to look at Meereen, shimmering in the distance. They see the high walls of the city, smoke curling lazily from the tops of its many pyramids. The city looks almost impossibly grand, but it's defended by a far smaller force. He spots the unsullied standing guard on the walls, utterly impassive. Beside them, freedmen bearing hastily made weapons stand nervously beside a handful of sellswords, all preparing themselves for the coming siege. Daenerys' army is outnumbered by at least 10 to 1, and many of them are doubtlessly untrained. But above it all, he sees dragons. Not just rumors from fireside tales, not just old stories, real, vast creatures, gliding effortlessly through the clouds like reborn gods. The men fall silent, utterly awestruck. "That's her," Tyrion whispers, his voice full of a strange mixture of awe and apprehension. "Daenerys Stormborn." Roderick shakes his head in disbelief. You're not thinking of fighting her, are you?" Tyrion shakes his head slowly. "I was sent into exile because I couldn't live in my father's world," he says softly. "And now look, the whole world is changing." He looks towards the distant horizon, his eyes gleaming with a fierce determination. As it happens, war doesn't always favor the strongest army. Sometimes, it favors the smartest. Soon enough, Tyrion sees the full, brutal horror of that war unfold before him. The Yunkish attack comes at full force, laying siege to Meereen, and bombarding the city with ballista fire and catapult barrages. Though they don't yet try to storm the walls, there is still plenty of brutality to go around. The besiegers rain down corpses infected with the pale mare plague and publicly execute captured slaves in front of the city walls. Even among their own soldiers, the wise masters of Yunkai hardly treat them any better. The slaves are regularly beaten and abused, and the sellswords are treated with barely concealed disdain. As Tyrion has not yet formally signed the contract, the masters place increasing pressure on him to at least make the agreement official and begin threatening to withhold their payments if they continue to refuse. Tyrion's resolve begins to crack as he watches this. He sees the kind of people he is serving and the needless chaos and pain they are inflicting. For the first time in years, he genuinely begins to doubt his choices. At night, Tyrion throws himself into the bottom of a wine bottle, trying desperately to drown his guilt and doubt. He tells himself it is simply a job and reminds himself that it is for the greater good of his men. But Tasha is not convinced. She grips Tyrion's hand tightly and looks at him with deep concern. "Why are we here, Tyrion?" she asks softly. "What are we doing?" Tyrion avoids her gaze. "This is our job," he mumbles. "We were tasked with taking the city. We cannot simply leave until we have done so." Tasha shakes her head sadly. "You betrayed one contract already to try and get here, to try and find purpose. What is this but trying to run away again? Is repeating your mistakes the only way you know how to find happiness? As opposed to the alternative." Tyrion snaps, his voice rising in anger. "What? Are you suggesting we simply abandon our post? Disgrace ourselves and leave our men to starve? Tasha's eyes flash with anger. What is this job? To help these monsters restore slavery? To bring more pain and suffering into the world? Look how they treat your men. This isn't just a job, Tyrion. We have the lives of thousands in our hands. Tyrion sighs wearily. Tasha, please, you don't understand. Tasha's voice rises. Don't I? Answer me this, Tyrion, she asks urgently. What would your father have done in this situation? Tyrion gives a long pause as he considers the question, but he knows the answer almost immediately. His father would have aided the slavers without hesitation, stopping only to extort them for as many gold dragons as he could, and suggested that some of his enemies be taken as slaves for their personal amusement. He pauses and bows his head, letting that harsh truth sink in. He clenches his fist and considers this. Because of that, he barely notices the tent opening and watches, confused, as Rodrik steps forward with a naked sword in his hand. The knight looks at his friend sadly, his eyes full of regret. As Tyrion's eyes fall upon the gleaming blade, Tasha leans closer to Tyrion, her expression full of fear. Is this a coup? Tyrion asks softly. Rodrik nods slowly. It is what you make of it, my lord. He pauses, his voice shaking with emotion. The men are in a fury. They do not wish to work for slavers, and they asked me to take over. They asked me to kill you, my lord. He looks down at the sword in his hand, his knuckles white as he grips the hilt. But I am prepared to come to an agreement. He looks up again, his eyes pleading, Leave now, Tyrion. Take your weapons, your horse, and whatever else you can carry, and ride hard out of camp. For the sake of our old friendship, I will ensure no one comes after you. Tyrion shakes his head. I won't sign the contract, he says softly. You were right. I cannot do this. But that is the only option. The other sellsword captains will take the offer, but the Junkish would be so powerful that... Rodrik sighs heavily. It's too late for that, he says sadly. You led them to the ends of the earth, and then aligned us with these slavers. You tarnished our reputation forever. They think there's no going back. Not while you lead us. Tyrion shakes his head. I can't stop them. They hate me. Can you blame them? Rodrik nods slowly. We followed you because we thought you were better than Tywin, he says softly. Because you put the needs of your bannermen above your own ambition, he sighs. I know. He pauses. But that is why I need your help. Fixing it. Tyrion shakes his head. There is no fixing this. Not without your help. Tyrion is cut off by Rodrik as he draws closer. There is always a way to fix it. Tyrion hesitates. He draws Tasha close with a reassuring smile. Rodrik hesitates. Please, I have a plan. I know that I cannot restore our reputation. Not here. Not with what I do. But maybe I can offer the men something greater. Something they'll never forget. We must give it time for the Junkish to be at ease. The plan will require that the men believe something great will happen for their efforts. Give me some time, and ensure that Lana and Tasha remain here. Rodrik agrees to give Tyrion 3 days before he can start the plan. It took time for the men to be at ease with the decision, but most of all, the men were ready for change of pace, and the opportunity for glory and wealth. And a few nights passed as planned, with nothing for the Junkish and the other mercenaries to be on alert. And with this, it was time. Tyrion stood on the deck of the Sea Serpent, the salt spray stinging his face as Tyro receded into the distance. The city's gilded towers, usually gleaming like dragon scales in the sunlight, were now obscured by a greasy pall of smoke. He gripped the railing, the wood rough beneath his fingers, and a bitter taste filled his mouth. He had done it. He had broken a contract. He had made an enemy of a powerful free city. He had, in essence, declared war on the established order of Essos. And for what? A twisted sense of revenge? A futile attempt to reclaim a lost honor? Roderick appeared beside him, his face grim. "The men are uneasy, my lord." Whispers, doubts. "Let them whisper," Tyrion replied, his voice tight. "Truth be told, Roderick, I am uneasy myself. I didn't anticipate the swift backlash. They will be hunting us for this. Every sellsword captain in Tyro will be licking their lips at the thought of our heads on pikes." "We knew there would be consequences," Roderick said. "But to betray the very men who followed you, it shook them, Tyrion. Some are starting to question your judgment." Tyrion sighed. "They have a right to question it. Gods, Roderick. Sometimes I wonder if I'm fit to lead a flock of sheep, let alone a company of sellswords. But I couldn't do it. I looked at those ships, those weapons, all meant to prop up my father's war, all dripping with the blood of innocents. I couldn't be a part of it. And now?" Roderick gestured towards the horizon. "Where do we go now? Somewhere they haven't heard of us, somewhere we can lick our wounds and rebuild. Volantis, perhaps? Or maybe even further east, towards Korth. But first we need coin and a contract, and that will be difficult." The coming weeks were fraught with peril. Tyro, enraged by the audacity of the Lion's venture, had indeed put a price on their heads. Smaller free companies, eager to make a name for themselves, harried their retreat. Each skirmish whittled away at their numbers, chipping away at their supplies and morale. Tyrion found himself increasingly isolated. The men, once eager to follow, his banner now regarded him with suspicion. They saw him as impulsive, reckless, driven by a personal vendetta that threatened to consume them all. One evening, as the sun bled crimson across the sky, Tyrion sat alone by the fire, a half-empty wineskin clutched in his hand. Tasha approached him, her face etched with worry. "Tyrion," she said softly, "you're pushing yourself too hard. You haven't slept properly in days, and you barely touch your food." "Can't afford to be sluggish," Tyrion muttered, taking another swig of wine. "We need to keep moving, keep ahead of the hounds." "That's not what I mean. You're not just leading an army, Tyrion, you're leading men. Men who are scared, hungry, and tired. They need to see that you care about more than just your revenge." Tyrion looked up at her, his eyes bloodshot. "What do you want me to do, Tasha? Throw a feast? Sing them a song?" "Show them you're still the man they followed to Essos, the man who believed in something more than gold and glory." She paused, her voice laced with concern. "You haven't mentioned Lana in days. She misses you, you know." The reminder of his daughter pierced through his drunken haze. Lana, a beacon of innocence in this cruel world. He had risked everything to bring her and Tasha together, and now he was endangering them both. He sighed, rubbing his temples wearily. "You're right, Tasha. I've been distracted. Distracted by ghosts," Tasha said gently. "Let them rest, Tyrion. You have a family now, a future to protect." The next morning, Tyrion woke with a renewed sense of purpose. He sought out Roderick, who was overseeing the training of the troops. "Roderick," Tyrion said, his voice clear and steady, "I need your help. I've been blind, consumed by my own demons. The men deserve better." Roderick looked at him, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "What do you have in mind?" "We need to find a new contract, something that will restore our reputation and our coffers. I hear Yunkai is looking for sellswords. The city's wise masters are prepared to pay handsomely. Daenerys Targaryen has become a threat, and they are desperate for assistance." Roderick's face darkened. "Yunkai? They're slavers, Tyrion. We'd be fighting to preserve their abhorrent system. I know, Tyrion said, his voice grim. It's a morally questionable proposition, to say the least. But we're not in a position to be choosy, Rodrik. We need coin, and Yunkai is offering a mountain of it. There has to be another way, Rodrik protested. We can't sell our swords to slave masters. Think of the men, Rodrik. They're starving, demoralized. If we take the Yunkai contract, we can feed them, equip them, and rebuild the Lion's venture. We can use their gold to secure our future. He paused, his voice laced with a hint of desperation. Besides, what other choice do we have? Rodrik remained silent, his jaw clenched. He knew that Tyrion was right. Their options were limited, but the prospect of fighting for slavers filled him with disgust. That evening, Tyrion addressed the men of the Lion's venture, his voice amplified by the still desert air. Men, he said, we find ourselves at a crossroads. We have made enemies in Tyro and our coffers are depleted. We need to find a new contract, and fast. I have received an offer from the wise masters of Yunkai. They are willing to pay us handsomely to help them defend their city against the threat of Daenerys Targaryen. A murmur rippled through the ranks. Some of the men exchanged uneasy glances. I know what you're thinking, Tyrion continued, his voice rising above the din. Yunkai is a city built on slavery, a city that traffics in human misery. But we are sellswords, not knights. We fight for those who pay us. And Yunkai is offering us a chance to rebuild, to restore our glory, to provide for our families. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the men. I will not force any of you to fight for a cause you do not believe in. Any man who wishes to leave is free to do so. You will be paid what is owed to you, but I urge you to consider the consequences. Without coin, without a contract, we are nothing. We will be hunted, scattered, and ultimately destroyed. The silence hung heavy in the air. The men weighed their options, their faces etched with conflicting emotions. Loyalty, greed, and moral qualms warred within them. As the days turned into nights, the Lion's venture marched towards Yunkai, the prospect of fighting for slavers weighing heavily on their minds. Tensions within the company escalated as men bickered and argued over the morality of their potential contract. One evening, a group of Westerosi knights, led by Sir Duncan the Tall, approached Tyrion, their faces grim. My lord, Sir Duncan said, his voice low and respectful, we have a concern. Many of the men are uncomfortable with the prospect of fighting for Yunkai. We are Westerosi knights, not slave traders. We have principles. I understand your concerns, Sir Duncan, Tyrion replied, his voice weary. But we have a responsibility to our men, to provide for them, to protect them, and Yunkai is offering us a chance to do that. Is there no other way? Sir Duncan pressed. Surely we can find a more honorable contract. Perhaps, Tyrion said, but time is not on our side. We need coin, and we need it now. I will consider your concerns, Sir Duncan, but in the meantime, I expect you and your men to remain loyal, to follow my orders. Is that understood? Sir Duncan hesitated, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Understood, my lord. As they approached the gates of Yunkai, Tyrion felt a growing sense of unease. The city's towering walls, built from sun-baked brick, seemed to exude an aura of oppression and cruelty. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, spices, and despair. He looked at the faces of the men, their expressions mirroring his own. Doubt, fear, and disgust were etched on their features. He knew that he was walking a dangerous path, a path that could lead to the destruction of the Lion's venture, and perhaps even his own soul. Then one night Rodrik found him, face grim. Tyrion, "A delegation from Yunkai. They demand your presence." Tyrion followed Roderick, heart pounding. He could practically hear the wheels of fate clicking into place. The envoys from Yunkai were, as one might expect, clad in garish yellow silks and adorned with heavy, ostentatious jewelry. They reeked of expensive perfumes and condescension. They wasted no time. "The wise masters of Yunkai wish to confirm your commitment," one stated, voice dripping with arrogance. "They have observed your recent difficulties and are confident you can prove your loyalty." "Loyalty is earned," Tyrion countered, but the words felt hollow. "Indeed," the envoy replied, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "By spilling blood for Yunkai. Daenerys Targaryen grows strong. The masters require a demonstration, a raid, a statement." "A statement?" Tyrion asked, a cold dread creeping into his heart. "The slaver city of Astapor has fallen. We are told that Daenerys Targaryen, the breaker of chains as they call her, has taken the city. The wise masters require a raid on Astapor, a show of strength, and the retrieval of certain assets." The envoy paused, a glint in his eye. "Slaves who were wrongly freed, returning them to their rightful owners would be a powerful message." Tyrion stared at the envoy, the full horror of the situation crashing down upon him. He was being asked to participate in the re-enslavement of innocent people. He was being asked to betray everything he believed in, to become the very monster he had sworn to fight against. That night, as he lay awake beneath the starlit sky, Tyrion wrestled with his conscience. The fate of the Lion's venture hung in the balance. He could accept the Yunkai contract, secure their future, and damn himself in the process, or he could refuse, risk their destruction, and cling to the remnants of his honor. The sun rose, painting the desert landscape in hues of orange and gold. Tyrion rose with it, his mind made up. He knew what he had to do. He sought out Roderick, his face grim. "We're leaving, Roderick," he said. "We're not taking the Yunkai contract. We're getting as far away from this place as possible." Roderick looked at him, his eyes filled with relief. "I knew you'd make the right choice, Tyrion." "It's not going to be easy," Tyrion warned. "The men aren't going to be happy. They're going to see this as a betrayal. But I can't do it, Roderick. I can't sell my soul to slavers." The news of Tyrion's decision spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Lion's venture. As predicted, many of the men were furious. They saw it as a reckless, irresponsible act, a betrayal of their trust. A mutiny was brewing. One of the men, a hulking brute named Bronn, confronted Tyrion, his face contorted with rage. "You're throwing away our future, Lannister," Bronn spat. "We could have been rich, powerful, but you had to go and get all high and mighty on us. Now we're going to starve in the desert." "I'm sorry, Bronn," Tyrion said, his voice calm but firm. "But I can't compromise my principles. I can't sell my soul for gold." "Principles?" Bronn sneered. "What good are principles when you're dead?" "We should string you up for this, Lannister." "But," Tyrion asked, seeing something in Bronn's eye that was not just rage, "but you've always paid well. If you have a better plan, speak fast." As it turned out that, whilst many soldiers wanted to remain on good terms and earn a living from a new contract, others sought something more permanent, and it began to emerge that maybe many of them wanted to settle down. So Tyrion proposed just that. "I do, Bronn. There's a small village just beyond the walls of Meereen. Daenerys doesn't yet realize its worth, and there is space for us all to be granted farmland and become farmers. Yes, you will no longer be in service, and the wealth will come slowly, but it will be yours. You will not owe anyone, and it will be yours and your children's birthright." A murmur went through the camp. So what Tyrion was proposing was not just abandoning a life of soldiery, but a new life. Then someone else stepped forward. Sir Duncan was the knight who was known for his steadfast resolve. "Lord Tyrion, if we cannot earn it with gold, then we must earn it with honor. We will offer our swords to Daenerys Stormborn." The men who would become farmers looked at the knights who would become sellswords again, and a divide began to be seen in the Lion's venture. But for those who wanted to be sellswords again, they knew they would need some legitimacy. "She may not wish to deal with us, with you, after we were contracted to fight for those who would oppose her." Tyrion closed his eyes. "Then I will go alone." "That is madness. I am the only one that can make this happen. I am a Lannister. I am known. And if I offer my services, they will know they have someone who is not only known in Westeros, but who will betray his own family, and that perhaps is my bargaining chip. And if she does not take it, then I, alone, will die." The Dragon Queen has now landed in Westeros, but she needs an ally she can trust, someone familiar with Westerosi customs and politics. Enter Tyrion. His initial meeting with Daenerys is fraught with tension, but his intelligence and political acumen quickly win her over. He understands the intricate web of alliances and betrayals that define Westeros, knowledge Daenerys sorely lacks. "Your Grace," he says, "conquering Westeros will be more than just fire and blood. It will require understanding the players, knowing their motivations, and exploiting their weaknesses." Daenerys, initially wary of a Lannister, recognizes the value of Tyrion's counsel. She appoints him as her hand, a position he accepts with a mixture of eagerness and apprehension. "I serve the realm, Your Grace, not a family name," he declares, though the shadows of his past still linger. Tyrion quickly proves his worth. He advises Daenerys on how to consolidate her power in the Reach, understanding that controlling the breadbasket of Westeros is crucial to maintaining her army and winning the support of the common folk. He suggests strategic alliances with houses, who have grievances against the Lannisters or the Tyrells, carefully playing the Game of Thrones. "The key to Westeros, Your Grace, is not the Iron Throne, but the people," Tyrion explains. "Win their hearts, and the throne will follow." But it's not all smooth sailing. Some of Daenerys' advisors, particularly those closest to her since childhood, distrust Tyrion. They see him as a Lannister, a schemer, and a threat to Daenerys' rule. Jorah Mormont, fiercely loyal to Daenerys, voices his concerns. "He's a Lannister, Khaleesi. Can you truly trust him?" Daenerys, however, trusts her own judgment. "He's proven his loyalty," she replies, "and his mind is a weapon more powerful than any sword." As Hand, Tyrion faces the daunting task of planning the invasion of King's Landing. He knows that a direct assault on the capital will result in massive bloodshed, something Daenerys is determined to avoid. He proposes a more subtle approach, a strategy that will force Cersei's hand and weaken her position. "We don't need to burn King's Landing to the ground, Your Grace," Tyrion argues. "We need to isolate it, cut off its supply lines, and let the people rise up against Cersei." Tyrion's plan involves a calculated siege of King's Landing, combined with a propaganda campaign aimed at turning the city's population against Cersei. He knows that the people of King's Landing are weary of war and oppression, and he believes that they can be swayed to support Daenerys. Meanwhile, Tyrion sends messengers to potential allies in Westeros, promising them rewards and recognition for supporting Daenerys. He appeals to their sense of justice, their desire for peace, and their ambition for power. He knows that not everyone will be swayed, but even a few key alliances can make all the difference, as Daenerys prepares to launch her final assault. On King's Landing, Tyrion faces a personal dilemma. He knows that returning to the Westerlands means confronting his father, Tywin Lannister, a man he both fears and despises. He knows that the confrontation will be inevitable, but he dreads the thought of facing his father on the battlefield. "This is not just about conquering Westeros, Your Grace," Tyrion admits to Daenerys. It's about facing my own demons, confronting my past, and finally breaking free from my father's shadow. Daenerys understands. Go to the Westerlands, Tyrion, she says. Claim your birthright and show your father what you are capable of. With Daenerys' blessing, Tyrion leads a portion of her forces, including the Lion's Venture, back to the Westerlands. His arrival is met with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Some of the Westerlands lords remain loyal to Tywin, while others are eager to embrace the new regime. Tyrion, remembering his time among the small folk and bannermen, proves adept at persuasion. He meets with the lords, listens to their concerns, and offers them generous terms for surrendering to Daenerys. He promises them protection, justice, and a chance to rebuild their lands after years of war. But not everyone is willing to yield. Tywin Lannister, ever the ruthless pragmatist, refuses to surrender. He rallies his remaining forces and prepares to defend Casterly Rock, the ancestral seat of House Lannister. As Tyrion approaches Casterly Rock, he feels a surge of conflicting emotions. He longs to claim his birthright, to finally be recognized as the true heir to Casterly Rock, but he also dreads the thought of facing his father in battle. The climactic confrontation takes place on the fields outside Casterly Rock. The Lannister forces, outnumbered but well-equipped, stand ready to defend their ancestral home. The Targaryen forces, bolstered by the Lion's Venture and several Westerlands houses, prepare to attack. Tyrion, leading the charge, rides towards the Lannister lines. He sees his father, Tywin, standing at the head of his army, his face grim and determined. For a moment their eyes meet, and Tyrion feels a pang of regret. "Father," Tyrion shouts, "yield, surrender, and spare your people." Tywin ignores him. "You have betrayed your house, Tyrion," he replies. "You are no longer a Lannister." With that, the battle begins. The two armies clash in a whirlwind of steel and fire. The Lannister forces, fighting on their home ground, put up a fierce resistance. But the Targaryen forces, fueled by their belief in Daenerys and their hatred of Tywin, fight with a ferocity that cannot be matched. Tyrion, leading the Lion's Venture, cuts through the Lannister lines, his sword dripping with blood. He sees Tywin, surrounded by his guards, directing the battle. He knows that he must reach his father, that he must end this conflict once and for all. With a surge of adrenaline, Tyrion pushes his way through the chaos, dodging blows and felling opponents. He reaches Tywin's guard, and a fierce duel ensues. The guards, loyal to their lord, fight bravely, but Tyrion is too skilled, too determined. He cuts them down one by one until only Tywin remains. The two men face each other, their swords raised. The air crackles with tension. The battle rages around them, but for a moment it is as if they are the only two people in the world. "You have always disappointed me, Tyrion," Tywin says, his voice cold and contemptuous. "You were always a disappointment." "And you have always feared me, father," Tyrion replies, his voice filled with anger. "You feared that I would surpass you, that I would prove you wrong." With a roar, Tyrion lunges forward, his sword meeting Tywin's. The two men exchange blows, each trying to gain the upper hand. Tywin, despite his age, is a formidable warrior, but Tyrion is younger, faster, and fueled by years of resentment. Finally, Tyrion manages to disarm Tywin, knocking his sword from his hand. Tywin stands defenseless, his face a mask of fury. "Now, father," Tyrion says, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's over." He raises his sword, ready to strike the final blow, but at the last moment he hesitates. He cannot bring himself to kill his own father, even after all that Tywin has done. "I cannot," Tyrion says, his voice barely a whisper. He lowers his sword, turns his back on Tywin, and walks away. He cannot kill his father, but he can leave him to face the consequences of his actions. The battle continues to rage, but without Tywin's leadership, the Lannister forces begin to crumble. The Targaryen forces, sensing victory, surge forward, overwhelming the remaining defenders. By the end of the day, the battle is over. The Targaryen forces have won a decisive victory. Casterly Rock has fallen. As Tyrion surveys the battlefield, he feels a mixture of relief and exhaustion. He has conquered the Westerlands, defeated his father, and claimed his birthright. But he knows that the war is far from over. With the Westerlands secured, Tyrion turns his attention to King's Landing. He knows that Cersei will not surrender easily, that she will fight to the bitter end. He knows that the final battle will be bloody and brutal, but he also knows that Daenerys is the rightful queen of Westeros, and that she will stop at nothing. To claim her throne, he will stand by her side, as her hand, as her advisor, and as her friend. He will do everything in his power to ensure that she wins the Iron Throne and brings peace and prosperity to Westeros. In the end, Tyrion secures his legacy as Lord of Casterly Rock, but not through inheritance or birthright. He earns it through his intelligence, his strategic acumen, and his unwavering loyalty to Daenerys Targaryen. He becomes a symbol of change, a testament to the fact that even a Lannister can rise above his family name and serve the realm with honor. He has also reunited with his beloved Tasha and their daughter Lyanna, creating a family and a legacy that would endure for generations to come. And so, the Dragon Queen's invasion of Westeros continues, guided by the steady hand of Tyrion Lannister, a man who finally found his purpose in a world turned upside down.